have an all scholarship on April 24th. It'll be at 5 p.m. Yeah, 5 p.m., which will also be the same day at the Early Visitors Center. Which will also be the same day as our next seminar over automotive maintenance and things like that. And so, an announcement before we start, please don't leave any trash in the bleachers, because last time we had stuff scattered everywhere, and we don't want that anymore. So now we'll introduce Sarika Kid.
All right, to introduce, we're starting in the middle with Miss Bridget Jones. She's the owner of Brownwood's Chick Fil A. Next, we have Mr. Bobby Flores, the executive restaurant director of our Chick Fil A as well. And then we have Ms. Lindsay Badgley, the executive director of business development. And they're going to tell us what we should expect to see with jobs and what we should see with just careers in general. Yeah.
So we'll hand it over to Ms. Bridget Jones.
Thank you. So my name is Bridget Jones. I'm going to pace because I'm like a nervous talker, and so I'm going to walk back and forth. So just ignore that a little bit. Can y'all hear me okay? Can you give me thumbs up? Sometimes I have a tendency to yell at microphones. Okay. So I'm actually from Brownwood. I went to high school, don't be mad at me, but I went to high school in Brownwood, and then I went off to Texas A&M, and I did my freshman and sophomore year at Texas A&M, and then I transferred to Howard Payne. So I actually graduated from Howard Payne, so I'm a local girl from the area. And I started my career as an adulting. I started as an elementary and middle school teacher. So I taught for 5 years, and after our little girl was born, who is now 11, this is our little girl, she's with us today. After she was born, I was diagnosed with cancer. And so I decided to leave the teaching field. I finished teaching that year, and I decided to leave because I wanted to do something different. I bought my first franchise, and it was called Just Between Friends. It was in the Austin area. It had nothing to do with chicken. But I ran that and I loved it because it gave me a chance where I could impact my community and I could love on people. And then I ran that, I bought that in 2013. In 2017, we won Franchise of the Year, and I was feeling really confident. And so I started researching Chick Fil A, and I am a huge Chick Fil A lover. Does anybody like Chick Fil A? Am I like food? Okay, I'm like a big fan. Like, we were already eating there 3 or 4 times a week. And so I remember sitting in a restaurant in Cedar Park, Texas, which is near the Austin area, and I remember sitting there thinking, I could do this. I could run a restaurant. I had never worked in a restaurant in my life. I had no idea what I was thinking. And I put in my application after talking with a friend who owned a Chick Fil A, and he let me know that at the time they were getting 40,000 applications a year, and they were only taking about 100 to 200 people. So my odds were not good. And at that time, there were 7 steps in the process. And so my husband and I had decided if we made it through to step 5, that I would sell my previous business, because it was kind of a hard business to sell. And so I made it through step 5, and so we sold my previous business in January of 2018. In May of 2018, I was sitting in Atlanta, Georgia, which is where the home office is for Chick Fil A, and I was interviewing for a restaurant in Austin, Texas, and I had the worst interview of my entire life. It was awful, like to the point where I walked out of there and I was like, they are not moving me forward, and I knew it in my head. But when I left that interview, they said you're gonna get 1 in 3 answers. It'll either be, yes, this is your restaurant, and you're moving on to the final step. It'll be, no, this is not your restaurant, but we think we'd like to talk to you about another one. So you're gonna stay in the pool of applicants, or it'll be, no, this is not your restaurant, your journey with Chick Fil A is done. I got that 3rd call. And they said your journey with Chick Fil A is done. You can reapply in 2 years from the beginning of your application, which was, I started in 2017. So they said in 2019 you can reapply if you want, and you can go work on the things that we think you're missing. They don't give feedback, so you just kind of have to figure out what you thought you were missing. So I went to my local Chick Fil A that was owned by a female operator as well. So operators are the word that we use for owner. And less than 10% of Chick Fil A's even to this day are owned by females. So I went to mine and I said, hey, if I don't go all in and I don't work in Chick Fil A, I will go the rest of my life wondering, could I have done it? So she hired me, and I started in a red polo shirt, just like you see our team here in Chick Fil A-Brownwood. I learned learned how to take orders in the drive-thru, I breaded chicken, I learned how to hire and fire and do all that stuff to run a business. And in the summer of 2019, I went to an event where the man that told me no, his name is Lamar, big, scary guy from Detroit. Lamar was there, and I saw him, and I wanted him to know, hey, I'm still around, and I'm not scared. I was terrified. But I walked up, and I stuck my hand up, and I was like, hey, Lamar, my name is Bridget. I don't know if you remember me, but I really just want you to know that I'm still around, and I'm trying. And he said, oh yeah, I remember you. And he said, I've been following your journey. And then he asked, would you ever be interested in a rural community? And I was shocked by that question. I said, Lamar, you know I'm from a small town, right? And he said, no, tell me where you're from. Remind me. And I said, I'm from this little town. You've never heard of it. The elder said that when you talked about earlier Brownwood. I said, you've never heard of it. It's called Brownwood, Texas. And he kind of like takes a little half step back and he goes, we're opening Brownwood's first freestander there in 2020. You can't tell anyone. So immediately I get to the car and I call my husband and I tell him. And I'm like, Jonathan, this is where we're going. Like this was God's plan all along. Like I truly believe that we're supposed to go to Brownwood. Well, when I had to start this process over with Chick Fil A, you can't just start back at step 6, which is where I was. You have to start back at step 1. And so that summer, I started my application again at step 1, and this time they added 2 more steps, so it was now a 9-step process. And then in my personal experience, they actually added 2 extra interviews, so it was an 11-step process to go through it the second time. There were 100,000 applications this time, and they were still only taking about 100 to 200 people. So the fact that I ended up in my hometown, and I ended up even getting the chance to run a Chick Fil A is still wild to me. I keep waiting for someone to like show up and ask me for the keys and say, never mind, we changed our mind. But we've been open since November of 2020, and I have the most incredible team. My leadership is incredible, and they are so good at what they do. I can't wait for you to hear from them. We actually have a few team members in here today. I will not embarrass them, but I think there's 5 in this room that work for us. But we are so excited to share with you about Chick Fil A. A few facts to know: Chick Fil A started in Georgia, Atlanta, Georgia, by our founder, Truett Cathy. He started his first restaurant in 1946. It's called the Dwarf Grill. It's still open to this day. You can get hamburgers there, which is kind of a wild thing for Chick Fil A. You can also get like chicken and waffles and some other kind of wild things that normal Chick Fil A's don't have. He invented the Chick Fil A sandwich around 1964, and he is a pioneer in opening restaurants in malls around 1967, because that wasn't a thing, but he decided that people should be able to get food while they're shopping. They opened their first freestanding unit, which is what we have. It's a drive-through with a parking lot around 1986. So that's a relatively new concept in the food world. We have about 2,500 Chick Fil A's nationwide, and we're still continuing to grow. But we are so glad to be here in Brownwood, and I'm going to let you guys take off with questions.
So this one is mostly towards Lindsay and Bobby. It's just real simple. What led y'all to Chick Fil A or Brownwood's Chick Fil A, if y'all want to be more exact?
Hi, my name is Lindsay. My story is, obviously not anything like that, but a little similar, where I was also a teacher in another life. So my husband and I I'm from the Dallas area, but we ended up here in Brownwood going to Howard Payne, and that's where we graduated from. And probably similar to some people around, y'all have grown up around here, but I know that, I spent 5 years in college. My 5 years in college, I was like, I'm never coming back to this place. We're ready to get out of here. The first thing we wanted to do was move back to the Dallas area and around my family, live in a big city. Okay? So we're both teachers. I coached for a while, but he has always taught and coached. And so we just lived that life for a little while, and then a coaching job at Howard Payne opened up, and he's the women's soccer coach there now. But it was so weird. They offered him that job, and immediately we were like, yes, we're gonna move back. What? I did not think that I would ever come back here. And now I'm like, I never wanna leave. Like we've loved it here. So anyway, but when we left Dallas, I left teaching. It wasn't, I could tell, it was just not for me. I tried it and I just didn't love it. So really when we moved here, I was like, I don't know what I want to do when I grow up. At that point I already had 3 kids, I was pretty grown up, but I didn't know what I wanted to do. So I was kind of a stay-at-home mom, just kind of finding little jobs here and there where I had some flexibility with my kiddos. And then in 2020, so I guess it was August of 2020, I get a text from Bridget, and it was like, come work for Chick Fil A-Brownwood. And I was like, I don't know what that means. I've never worked in a restaurant before. I don't think you want me. Maybe you got the wrong number. I told her no. I was like, yeah, I don't want to do that. And I told her no, and she was like, that's fine. I'm probably going to reach back out to you in about a month. I think she said like a month to about 6 weeks. And I was like, great. And naturally, the kind of person I am, I'm not going to worry about something unless it's right there in front of me. So I just stopped thinking about it. I was like, if she reaches out to me, great. So I didn't really think about it anymore. And then it was probably only like 2 weeks later, maybe 3, she reaches out again and she was like, come work for me. Please, like, come work for me. I've got this job for you. I don't really know what it's gonna look like, but I think that you'd be a good fit for it. And so I did. And so I was like one of the first hires for them in October of 2020. I don't know if y'all remember, but when Chick Fil A was being built, there was a little trailer that sat off in the park next door, and that was my office. So I was just hanging out in this big empty trailer, and we were just hiring all the new people on and everything like that. And so it's been a pretty wild ride. I feel like I'm still learning because there's so much to learn in the Chick Fil A world. But I know that something that is so special about it, and something that I had never been a part of, is just one of their main goals is growing leaders and like just the opportunity to be able to grow. And I can see that from my journey already, how far I've come. And yeah, it's been pretty incredible, so.
Yeah, Bobby Flores again. I grew up in the Leander, Cedar Park area, graduated from Leander High School, worked at Chick Fil A in the mall there, Lakeline Mall, back when it had a Chick Fil A. That was my first job ever. And then I went to Howard Payne actually, and graduated in 2008. I worked at the Chick Fil A in the early mall, back when it was around also. And then I left Chick Fil A and never thought I'd work there again. So 2008 I graduated. That was the last time I worked for Chick Fil A. And I went into the ministry, was a children's pastor, youth pastor for a while, taught for a little bit, owned my own insurance company in Dallas for a little bit. Did that for about 7 years, and really loved to get me to work on myself, grow as a leader in those organizations. I had a team underneath me that I helped train and lead and teach them how to sell things. And randomly, I got connected to some friends from Howard Payne again that were in a fraternity together, and one of them was the same person that she got connected to, who owns a Chick Fil A in San Antonio. And I heard about his story, and I was really impressed with him and his life and the way that he talked about what he did and the impact that he had and how much he loved what he did. But I didn't do anything about it. I just thought about it. I was like, wow, that's kind of cool. And then I went to the mountains with her husband and Jonathan and this guy, Josh, that owns the Chick Fil A in San Antonio area. And again, I heard them talking about what they did, the impact, the influence, the leading the teams, and just the heart of service and caring for people. And I was really drawn to that. My background was taking care of people, right, through the ministry, through teaching, through insurance products, making sure like people had what they need to take care of themselves and their families. Like I always had that heart, but at that time of my life, I was living in Dallas, Texas, and was selling a lot of things, but from my front window, watching people walk on a walking trail and making phone calls a million times a day. And I just kind of thought, like, I have a good life, but I don't love what I'm doing. And a couple times now, I've heard this thing about Chick Fil A and how much people love it. And I thought back to my years at Chick Fil A, and I was like, oh, man, when I worked for Chick Fil A as a kid, as a teenager, and as a young college student, I really learned like how to conduct myself properly. I really learned how to do things like with excellence. Right? One of Trick Cathy's famous sayings is, "Why not your best?" And I love that saying. Like you should give your best in anything that you do. So I reached out to Jonathan and I was like, hey, am I being crazy, or do you think I can maybe come work for you guys? And after a long, weird process, kind of short actually, process with my wife, we prayed about it, thought about it. We had 2 kids. She was pregnant with our 3rd kid. We left our house and moved from Dallas, and I came here to learn from Bridget and Jonathan and Lindsay and just be able to learn how to run a restaurant. And I'm currently in that grueling 10-step process of interviewing to become an operator myself. And it's been amazing. So working for Chick Fil A, one of the greatest things about it is just learning how to love serving people. Like if you don't love serving people, right, and giving them your best, then working in a restaurant is probably not a good fit, right? Like that's what we do. Like we love to serve people. We love to make them feel cared for. And just by serving them a warm meal, it's like it's more than chicken. It is chicken. It's great chicken. But we want people to come in our restaurant and really love their experience. So I get the joy of training our team on how to do that at a really high level consistently.
Thank you all. Those are all really awesome stories. So we're gonna shift our focus now to like the interviewing and job hunting aspects. And so our first question, the second question I guess is, what should a potential employee look for when job hunting?
When someone is thinking about coming to work for us, one of the things I tell them is come into the restaurant and just watch the people. So watch how the managers interact with the team members, but also watch how team members interact with guests, and how do they also interact with each other. I think as you're looking at your future, that is a good secret that you can use. You can go in as a guest somewhere and just watch. And it doesn't matter if it's Chick Fil A or Walmart or a big Fortune 500 company. Go in and just see how they interact with each other and see, do you really want to be a part of that? If they're not speaking kindly to each other, maybe that's not a place that you belong. Or if you just see that, man, I love how they walk really fast and they hustle and they really take care of everything, and you think you can bring some of that to the table, then maybe that is a good fit. But just, I would look at that culture piece of, do you really want to be a part of that before you join it?
Also, something to look at is whenever you're looking for a job, you need to decide, write down your schedule. Look at what's your schedule look like, and what jobs in town are going to allow you to kind of fit into that a little bit better. Look at what times they're open. Are you willing to work the hours or work the times that they have available for you? You'll be able to know pretty quickly, if a place is 24 hours, do you want to work those kind of hours? You may want to, and you may not want to. Also, Chick Fil A, obviously, we're known for being closed on Sundays. That is something that we consider a benefit, but there are some people who need to work every day of the week, and that's perfectly fine. But if that doesn't fit into the kind of schedule or what you're needing, then that can kind of help check off some places that you may want to apply to, and maybe mark off some places that aren't a good fit for you.
Yeah, kind of piggybacking on what they said, think about when you walk into that place, is this something I think I could have a genuine interest in? And maybe give yourself some grace on that, because you're figuring that out right now. At your age, I didn't know what I wanted to do for the rest of my life. In fact, even after college, I didn't know what I wanted to do for the rest of my life. It was like age 35.